Day 1030 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzie here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll take a look at those Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 768,000 military personnel losses, representing an additional 1,530 in the past day. Truly staggering figures, as Putin has become so entrenched in this conflict that he shows no hesitation in sacrificing Russian manpower for his botched invasion. Then as for the hardware losses, 5 tanks, 27 APVs, and 14 artillery. Then headed to the map, to the Novoshatinsk oil refinery in the Rostov Oblast of Russia, where this oil refinery, one of Russia's largest with a capacity of almost 200,000 barrels per day, suffered a devastating attack involving dozens of drones and potentially missiles. The strike, occurring in the early hours of the morning, sparked massive fires that engulfed processing units and tanks, leaving the facility inoperable. The acting governor of the region reported that Russian air defenses shot down several drones, but the scale of destruction suggests a significantly ravaged site. Now, this refinery had previously been targeted in July and March of this year, causing severe damage to operations already. And so with energy exports and internal consumption critical to Russia's economy and war efforts, Ukraine's repeated targeting of oil facilities underscores its strategic push to undermine Russian infrastructure. And then, not too far away, also in Rostov, the Kamensky FKP plant, a critical site for weapons and ammunition production, was also reportedly targeted by Storm Shadow missiles. The strike marks what is expected to be the first use of these missiles in the area, and was targeted because satellite imagery from December 2022 and October 2023 revealed significant expansion at the facility, emphasizing its strategic importance. A military factory right on Ukraine's doorstep. That's interesting, and first built at a time when Ukraine didn't have this strike range capability. Yet, they just kept expanding the facility. It boggles the mind. But it wasn't over for Rostov overnight, as residents in Primorsko reported hearing explosions coinciding with the activation of Russian air defense systems as they reported the response to UAV launches. And then meanwhile, in the neighboring Rostov region and the city of Tagnarog, once again, similar reports were again advised, once again indicating quite the overnight coordinated AFU strike effort. There was also other reports of one-way UAV attacks from Ukraine into Russia at places like Belgorod and Bryansk, but Rostov overnight was really the whipping boy, staying true to its internet nickname of Rostov. Then briefly headed across to Kursk, where more activity can be seen. Now, apart from the Russian tanks and other armoured fighting vehicles most recently seen destroyed, which should be odd in and of itself, given that Russia's Gerasimov assured us that Ukrainians were getting obliterated and pushed out of Kursk some time ago. But the reality is very different, as for instance, we actually see entirely different concerns still voiced by members of the Russian armed forces, like this individual who complains to command that there is no real equipment to evacuate wounded soldiers with. There is, instead, only this one-wheeled cart. Then also on the map, headed into Ukraine, there's still a great deal of activity on the front lines of the Seversk pocket in northeastern Donetsk. And most notably here today, it looks like the AFU's Thermite spray dragon drones got an upgrade, with this one seen here delivering a significantly stronger punch or spray than previous iterations of the platform, as this one can be seen here destroying a Russian dugout position like a bad case of explosive diarrhea. Then also on the map, another Russian Ka-52 attack helicopter was downed, and as reported by Russian aviation adjacent Telegram channels, though it is hard to get an accurate picture of what happened in this event, but the line reads, quote, "Rest in peace, brothers. The preliminary is our air defense network. Commission is already on its way. They will sort it out." And all of that means another friendly fire incident. And another call to the investigative committee that never finds a way to resolve these such issues. Oh, Russia. Then to a further look at the Kerch Strait, where reports confirmed the remains of Russian tankers that were found near the Kerch Bridge, indicating significant damage to the area. Also occurring from these weather pattern events was how Russia's installation of protective barriers or barges designed to protect the passage in and out of the Azov Sea, and of course the Kerch Bridge, suffered significant losses, with only 11 out of the 34 barges remaining from the entire event. So in all, what a devastating week for Russia, midweek pretty much, with still some days left to go. Then also on the map, in a manner of speaking, so head to Transnistria, as Russia has leveled accusations against Moldova, claiming that the country is plotting to exploit the ongoing gas crisis in Transnistria as a pretext for a military takeover. The Kremlin issued a stern warning that any actions perceived as threatening Transnistrian security will be treated as an attack on the Russian Federation itself. So there's a couple of things to break down here. So, the gas crisis spoken of there arises from Ukraine's slow but final decision to not renew its gas transit agreement with Russia, set to expire on December 31. Consequently, Russian gas deliveries through Ukraine to Moldova and Transnistria are expected to cease from January 1st, of course. But why is Transnistria so affected, whereas Moldova is not? Well, Moldova has a wide array of international partners from which to source alternative natural gas supplies, whereas Transnistria, being the internationally unrecognized and Russian-controlled region that it is, something which has made them inherently geopolitically isolated due to their unrecognized status, this leads to Transnistria facing significant constraints in alternative sources for their energy security. And so you can see the level of Russian control in this sliver of land when you drive up to the border and see armed military border guards with Russian flag patches on their arms. No wonder it's unrecognized. Most Moldovans left the region years ago, and surprise, surprise, the predominant language of the region is no longer Moldovan, but is instead now, yep, you guessed it, Russian. Then secondly, as for these Kremlin claims and accusations, and indeed threats, about any action threatening the Transnistrian security will be considered an attack on the Russian Federation, Russia says this because, to the Kremlin, this location is Russian territory. In every way possible except for name, and a dirty unofficial annexation. So I think we can expect to see another impending Russian collapse in this separate region as well soon, or at least in the not too distant future. Then headed across to some news, to some hardware news, as Ukraine's innovative naval drones have already been redefining warfare in the Black Sea a second time over, as this latest Ukrainian naval drone is equipped with advanced features like aerial drones and mine deployment, which recently carried out a successful raid on Russian-occupied gas platforms on December 6 between Odessa and Crimea. During the attack, the USVs launched quad-rotor drones for reconnaissance and precision strikes on Russian equipment and personnel. Remarkably, the drones maneuvered to drop charges near the platform's supports, potentially using the time-delayed detonations. This new USV, larger and more versatile than earlier models, also offers the option of returning to base, unlike the traditional one-way attack vessels. Naval warfare will never be the same again. Then to a Russian hardware update, as a report from Ukraine's Defense Express highlights significant repairability issues faced by Russian armored fighting vehicles. A tweet discussing operational attrition among the Russian vehicle fleet emphasizes how these repair problems are leading to increased difficulties in maintaining a reliable supply line. The situation is exacerbated by the fact that T-72 and T-80 tanks feature non-interchangeable fire control components and utilize up to 7 different engine types, complicating logistics and repairs, while armored vehicles arriving from storage often need significant overhauls, including engine replacements and battery charges, including lengthy rebuild times for older power packs. And with some estimates suggesting that preparing these tanks for combat could take prolonged periods of time, not at all suited for reactivation at time of war. And on the Russian hardware topic, I'll quickly interject here to say that the country doesn't give me a lot of innovative material to report on, so I just work with what I've got, which isn't usually the most positive of Kremlin news stories. Then in some more news, Putin recently took part in his questions and answers event, named the Direct Line event. Now, as a reminder, the Direct Line event is a fake or staged annual December time event in Russia where Putin pretends to listen to the voiced concerns of his citizens with questions he is fed on stage that are a series of cherry-picked questions from Russian citizens covering topics that range from domestic policies to international issues. Needless to say, Putin knows all the questions and is fully prepared with all of his responses. And so in this latest event, Putin opened his Direct Line boasting about Russia's amazing economic growth over 2 years and low unemployment rates, claiming faster growth than the EU and the US. Now, not only is this inaccurate, but any perceived growth was influenced by substantial government spending, particularly in the defense sector due to the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. He was quite cheeky here as well because he used stats that ranged over 2 years, so 23 and 24, because they starkly contrast with the immediate shock economic decline of Russia in 2022 at the commencement of the SMO. So basically, he's extending the timeline to take it far enough to compare the better economy to the much worse off economy just prior. What's he going to compare it with next year? 3 years? Now, Putin also acknowledged the inflation rate of 9.2 or 9.3%, or at least the officially advised inflation rate, where he criticized the central bank for inefficiency, which appears to be hinting at possible leadership changes and another upcoming key interest rate hike for the Russian central bank. And as for this central bank inefficiency he speaks of, we're looking at the real inefficiency right here. Now, there's more to this event and plenty of material worthy of upcoming funnies as well. Then in some more news, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and French President Emmanuel Macron met in Brussels to discuss defense strategies against Russian aggression, with France committing to train 2 Ukrainian brigades. They also explored peacekeeping troop deployment, aligned with US President-elect Donald Trump's proposal for European forces to monitor a ceasefire, tied to Ukraine's NATO membership timeline. And I would think that, ultimately, to maintain some sort of peace agreement, Russia has to be kept in check, so as to not perform a Ukraine invasion 2.0, or really 3.0 at this stage, by way of peacekeeping troop deployment. Then to another Russian economy news blunder, as industry leaders and the Russian Council of Shopping Centers predict that a staggering 25% of Russian shopping centers may face bankruptcy by 2025 due to soaring costs, property tax hikes, and competition from online marketplaces. The head of the Russian Council of Shopping Centers highlighted financing struggles, worsened by rising interest rates, also noting that taxes now consume a whopping 50% of mall income, and that with foreign exits due to Western sanctions causing over $107 billion in losses. Now, at the start of the internet age, they used to talk about the death of the mall. Didn't quite end up happening, but it looks like Russia just might be the exception. Then to a couple of quick Russian military mobilization blunder segments, so more footage seen of the low morale found within the Ruski army, where another drinking session among the soldiers with further revelations about poor treatment from commanders and wounded comrades. Time for mutiny. And speaking of wounded soldiers, in a striking revelation, a soldier in Russia has reportedly waited an astonishing 60 days for medical treatment following a mine blast injury, highlighting severe shortcomings in the evacuation and medical response systems. During his wait, he managed to provide self-care, all of which raises serious concerns about the state of military medical services, completely lacking any sort of Kremlin compassion. And events like these always seem to be Russia's best kept secret, at least inside of Russia, with the narrative that the SMO was doing well, it was doing great even. But these types of stories have gotten out to the general public now, at least in some fair volume, making it significantly less enticing these days to want to patriotically sign up and join the SMO. Then headed across to a quick funny to round it all off for today, guys. So, Putin is beating at the drum again about a magical and 100% effective cancer cure that his medical industry has whipped up, or at least a protection shot you can get. And he's really been on this bandwagon before, about a year ago. So where is it, Putin? It's a bold claim with zero credibility. It doesn't even specify the type of cancer, with each requiring different treatments. And so medical breakthroughs aren't press releases, instead they're peer-reviewed, rigorously tested and validated through repeated results, for which we see none from Russia. Not to mention Russia's track record, with a lack of scientific transparency, already speaks volumes. So, wake me up when international journals confirm not a Kremlin gremlin that projects power in any way that he possibly feels that he can. Although, safe to say, if Putin's saline shot, cancer immunization shot comes with a free trip to the SMO, then yeah, I guess it's pretty much guaranteed that you won't be dying from anything slow and natural. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks again for watching. Please continue to like, comment, subscribe, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers!